Hey guys, it's Virgin Vinyl with you again today. I know it's been a while since I posted my last video, but there's a whole number of reasons for that, but mostly I was like coming close to the end of my collection of stuff that I had anything really to say about anyway. Like I have other records that I could have shown, and I still could show, I guess, but I just don't have that much to say about them. I just don't know that much. I don't have that much that I can really talk about with some of those albums. Even some of them that I really love, like when I showed the Malevolent Creation album, I mentioned that there was two other albums that I got at the same time that were also classics and also that I loved. But I realized I don't know like how much I can say about them. So I had the second Gorguts album, Erosion of Sanity, which I fucking love. That's a great pulverizing death metal album. But, you know, I suppose there's some stuff I could say about Gorguts. Maybe I'll do a video about them. And the other one that I got was Immolation, the first album, which is another dead set classic. Yeah, maybe I could, I don't know. There might just be shorter videos. I don't have that much to say about those bands, I guess. Like I don't know all the sort of background that much. I just know that I like those albums. So anyway, that brings us to today, and something that, like an album that has been really hard to get hold of over the last number of years has been this one right here, Death, Symbolic, which has just been reissued finally after many years by Roadrunner Records. And my local record shop just got it into the, I put it into this sleeve because it was coming in this paper one here, and I just hate keeping the records in those. It's not good. I prefer to keep it in an anti-static plastic. Anyway, that's the back there. Now, Death is a really interesting band. I've already shown like probably what's my favorite album of them, or it's been my favorite album for a lot of years anyway, and that's Individual Thought Patterns. Death is one of those bands that I have always sort of jumped around with what's my favorite album from them, because just all their albums are good. The only album I really don't like, or that I find I can't really listen to, is Sound of Perseverance, because I just think the drumming isn't very good. Like I know a lot of people will disagree with me about that, but I just don't think they know what they're talking about. Like if any of you have watched any other videos on this channel of mine, you know that like I'm a big jazz fusion fan and stuff like that. So when Chuck was trying to add those kind of fusion-y elements and rhythms into the band, I just don't think Richard Christie, the drummer on that album, was up to that task. He sounds great when he's doing the straightforward driving death metal stuff, but when he's trying to do some of the intricate sort of rhythmical stuff, that it just doesn't work. It just sounds like he's dropping the time, and he's sort of sloppy. And there's some of the riffs are just like they feel halting and stuff like that, where they should. Gene Hoglan does kind of nails it much better on this album, in my opinion. Like I think Gene Hoglan is just a superior drummer, and he does have more of the groove. I think that's the thing. It's like Richard Christie, most metal drummers aren't so great when it comes to groove. The really good ones are, of course, because they're just good drummers. And they have a musical ear that has sort of soaked up other styles, and not just death metal, not just metal, and so they're able to incorporate that. And you saw that with previous drummers from Death, and and absolutely nail it. And Gene Hoglan, I think he did a great job on Individual Thought Patterns, and he does a great job here on Symbolic. And what's interesting about this album is that, besides the fact that, it was the only album that, what's the label that the rest of the album's on? Is it Relapse? I can't remember off the top of my head. It's the only album that wasn't under that that whatever label releases all their other albums, and they've done lots of re-releases and full dynamic range mixes and all sorts of stuff, and that's all been great. But there was never Symbolic, and because it wasn't under that label, they couldn't get the rights to it. But finally, they've re-released it. Thank God, it's fantastic. What's interesting about this album is that it's one for some reason that even though I listened to it a hell of a lot around the year 2014, 2015, when I was really sort of getting into technical death metal and coming back to metal. I came back to metal around that time, around 20, yeah, maybe even earlier, I got deep into the tech death stuff around 2014, but I started coming back to metal in a big way around 2011, I think, around then. And and for many years, all I was listening to was jazz rock and prog and funk, and stuff like that. I wasn't really interested in metal at the time, and I think that was mainly because of what I was seeing in the mainstream metal, and I sort of had become disconnected from the underground and from death metal, and all I was seeing was Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot and all this shit that I fucking hate, and just fucking awful shit. Anyway, around 2014, I was listening to a lot of tech, and a lot of the tech bands that I was into were mentioning this album. So it made me sort of dust it off again, and I really got into it for a while. But then I kind of, as I hung around with the death metal, I eventually, I don't know, I started to realize I kind of hate the modern tech death sound and how fake it really is, and was craving that first wave, the early death metal, and all the originators. And this album kind of fell by the wayside for me. But I have to say, listening to it again recently, it's raced right up to the top of my rankings. It's just such a fucking good album. The songs are so many of these songs are just iconic, and they're so well written. I mean, of course, Symbolic, the title track, what a great opener that is. I mean, that it's always stuck in my head, that song. Zero Tolerance kills, Thousand Eyes kills. I mean, all the songs. There is not a weak moment on this album, in my opinion. But standouts like Crystal Mountain, of course, Crystal Mountain is not just a death metal classic, but a heavy metal classic. Across the whole genre, in my opinion. That is a great, amazingly well-written song, and it just pulverizes. It's so fucking cool. The thing is with this album that really lifts it for me is Gene Hoglan's drumming. He just knows when to hit the gas and when to hold back and when to make things tight and intricate and fusiony. And man, Gene is pure class on this album. Sounds fantastic. I used to think that this album sounded, compared to Human and Individual Thought Patterns, I felt like it felt more restrained and pulled in, and I think it is to some degree. But actually, I think what it actually is just that the songwriting itself has become more. It's more compact and it's more straight to the point, and in not in a way that sacrifices any of the complexity or the nuance. It's still all there. All the fire is there. It's just more concise, I think, and it's absolutely amazing. So for me, it's this used to sit pretty low for me in my ranking of death. Even though I was listening to it a lot in 2014. Like I said, there's no bad death albums, really. Even Sound of Perseverance, which I don't really like because of the drumming. The songs are great. There's plenty of great songs on there. And some of it's really cool. Don't get me wrong. It's not a piece of shit. It's just, I'm a bit fussy when it comes to these things, when you grow up like listening to Billy Cobham and Steve Gadd and guys like that, you're a little less forgiving of some of these metal guys who try to do it and can't pull it off. But that's probably just a bit of a jazz snob thing, that like I don't know. But funnily enough, I have spoken to other metal guys who feel the same way. That like, anyway, that's neither here nor there. Inside you get the lyrics, the thank yous. It's not really much of a, I haven't put too much effort into this re-release, to be honest. It's pretty basic, but I don't care. I've got the record. I'm stoked. This is like an absolutely incredible album, and like I said, it's really it used to sit low for me in the rankings, but I think maybe with older ears or something, like I'm really appreciating what they achieved on this album, and I think it's pretty monumental. I think it's probably, I don't know if it's gonna take over individual thought patterns, because the thing I love about that album is that you've got a lot of the stuff that you have here, like Chuck's, pushing forward. It's just as heavy, probably heavier even than this. I don't know. It's the same. But the thing that tips it over the edge for me is Andy LaRocque. I'm a big King Diamond fan, and there's just something so cool, I think, about having like Death, with this fucking, like the sort of the proggy, techie Death version of Death with, this classic metal guitarist Andy LaRocque in there, and his signature sound. Andy LaRocque is such a great guitarist, not because he's the fastest guy around, even though he can shred like the Dickens, but because he's got a really recognizable, unique sound. That's always been the thing for me that makes guitarists stand out and make me love them, or not just guitarist, any instrumentalist who has their own voice, their own sound. That's the most important thing, and he most definitely does. And so to hear that in that context is so damn cool. But Bobby Cobell does a great job here as well, and although Chuck does most of the soloing, but Bobby does some cool shredding on here as well, like on Symbolic. I also used to like sort of have some bias against this album because there was no Steve DiGiorgio, and as a bass player myself, I was like, come on, it's not as good without those like twisting snake-like Steve DiGiorgio bass lines. But again, I think I was just that was just a psychological block, because like when I'm just listening to this clean recently, I hadn't listened to it for a couple of years, and when I've been putting it on, when I bought it, when I saw that the shop had it and I ordered it, I started listening to it before I picked it up, and then when I brought it home, obviously I've listened to it a few times already, and I'm just listening to it on its own merits, not trying to compare it to anything or without any of those previous biases, and it's absolutely knocked my socks right off. It's awesome. This is an awesome album. I think it would be up there. I love the. This is another thing I want to address, is like this whole thing about whether or not death metal albums after, some of you might watch Hell's Headbangers guy Justin Horville's channel, J-Dog, where he's and don't get me wrong, I like J-Dog. I think he's pretty funny, and I agree with him on quite a lot of things, but also disagree with him on quite a lot of things as well. And one of the things I disagree with him is his take on death. It's like he's got him and some of these other guys that he's pals with, they have this opinion that like after leprosy, maybe spiritual healing, pretty much everything after that is not death metal anymore. It's like, well, what the fuck is it then? It's okay, it's a subgenre, it becomes a subgenre of death metal, like, it's still fucking death metal. This is death metal, okay? It's death metal plus, okay? It's death metal with some extra stuff added onto it, but like it's like, you know, death metal is this base, you create the foundation, and then sometimes Chuck's adding stuff to it. You know, it doesn't make the base not metal. When Gene is thundering through Crystal Mountain in the chorus with the, like, what other genre is that? It's not thrash. It's fucking death metal, man. And I don't know. I think that, like, that whole debate about I think J-Dog's just completely wrong about that. It's certainly, like, I mean, I know he says that, like, back in the day that guys were saying it's not death metal and stuff. Well, maybe some of those crusty motherfuckers that he hangs out with. But I knew plenty of people back in the day who were into death metal who just saw it as another fucking kick-ass death metal album from Death, you know, the inventors of death metal. So yeah, it's more progressive, it's more technical, but it's still fucking rampaging. It's still, you know, not the kind of music you're gonna put on for your mum when she comes over. And you know, so I think J-Dog, you're fucking wrong, mate. At least about that. You're a funny bastard though, and I fucking love you. But you're fucking wrong about that. Just because, like, death metal has a range of sounds. It has a, like, and if it doesn't, then it's a shit genre. You know, like, if it's only primitive riffs and deep guttural growls, if that's all it is, then it's shit. It's got no like room to grow or no variety. And and when I say that, I don't mean because those things are shit. Like, I like a lot of the primitive stuff too, just like J-Dog does. And I love a lot of demos and stuff like that. But you know, there's a spectrum of stuff, and it ranges from, you know, like the most crusty, you know, primitive, simple, you know, cave dwelling Neanderthal heaviness, to the more sophisticated end of things where they're, you know, adding other elements into the music, but the bass, that extremity that has surpassed thrash and has surpassed other forms of heavy metal, and it's not black metal, it's a subgenre of death metal if you really want to separate it. Here's my little buddy here, coming to invade my video. Alright guys, Death Symbolic, fantastic album. Sorry it's been a while. I'll try and do some more videos, you know, I'll try and up the videos. Soon we'll be going to, Tommy and me, we're going to be flying to America in July. And as I've told you before, I've got like about 30 records waiting for me there, and we're going to do some more shopping.
That's right.
He wants to go shopping, he wants to buy like all these wrestling toys and stuff. But I'll be buying records, so look forward to that. And there'll be some metal hopefully, but there'll also be a hell of a lot of jazz rock and prog and some awesome stuff, so stay tuned for that. Alright guys, take it easy, have a great one, and I'll see you next time.